Hey, you guys, we are back with The Disconnect. The Disconnect, if you didn't know, is a show on relationships and how they impact us in today's society. I am met today with Schanaque Watson as well as Dr. MJ, who is a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. So, Dr. MJ is going to basically break down what colorism, featurism, as well as texturism are. And then we're going to hear from Shaniqua about her experiences in dating and being faced with these things.
Yeah, absolutely. You want me to go ahead and kick it off?
Yeah, go ahead and kick it off. Don't hold back.
Okay. All right, y'all. So the thing about colorism is that the term basically means to discriminate or separate based on a person's skin tone. So oftentimes you hear somebody say, oh, she's light skinned or she's dark skinned. And one of the things about colorism is that there is a long history of it, and there's some deep rooted issues as to how we got that way in our society. So if you look at any nation that has ever been colonized by European settlers, you're usually going to find that there are issues around colorism. If you look at countries in South America, if you look at like Brazil, for example, they have different ways that they categorize themselves based on skin tone. If you look at India, they have the caste system. They have, issues around colorism. Oftentimes, a lot of the darker skinned folks have like the labor positions that, whereas folks with lighter skin often have like better positions and they're held in a higher esteem in some ways in a lot of those nations. And the same thing in certain parts of Africa too that were colonized. It's not uncommon to go to some countries too and see like skin bleaching ads and stuff like that. You'll see big billboards. Now, you don't see that so much here in the United States, but we still have our issues around colorism too. Let's talk about it. So hip hop songs. It's not uncommon for us to hear something about, oh, she red, which means has lighter skin, or, beautiful Latina, or, certain women being praised, where you often don't hear that as much about darker skinned women being praised and put on a pedestal in the same way. And, honestly, for us in America, a lot of it boils down to, we go back in our history, a lot of it has to do with slavery, because there was some division that we saw, amongst slave owners. You had the light-skinned slaves that may have worked inside of the home, and then you had the dark-skinned slaves that may not have worked inside of the home. And so, anything that was considered more Eurocentric in terms of beauty standards, like skin tone, was considered better, right? And so it's just been a long history of that. And we've seen it here in our society. And like I said, we've seen it in a lot of other societies, especially where there has been European settlers that have colonized that region.
Okay, Shaniqua, did you want to basically share your experience on like what dating has been like, especially, we talk about different places like the North and the South. So what has your dating experience been like being in the South and being someone with a darker complexion?
So okay, so you asked like two questions, but let me just I'll go ahead and answer the one with dating. So dating in the South is always typically it's funny to me because usually when I have my Afro hair, that's my empowered hairstyle, real Afrocentric. Most guys who I've dated, they hate my hair like that. I even dated a guy before. He paid for me to get my hair done. I came with my Afro hair. He was like, "You need to take that out." And I'm like, "No, like this is my empowerment hair. I love this hair." It's just like, no, you need something like a wrap, but not your Afro hair like sticking out. I'm like, I have a connection like with my ancestors. I'm like, hey, I love this. He was like, I don't know, we need to figure something out. I'm like, well, you're not wearing it. And he was like, but I paid for it. And I was like, well, then I'll just get your money back. Like, I'm going, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to wear my hair like that. But I've also just kind of encountered with a lot of guys. I've gotten a lot like, oh, I don't usually date dark skinned girls, but you cool, so I'll take a chance on you. It's kind of like the lottery, like okay, you know, you may win, you may not, but that's like things like I've encountered with like dating guys. And I think I mentioned to Shamika, even with being dark skinned and being a plus size woman, so it's kind of twofold. It'll be like, oh, you dark, but you know, well, you know, I like plus size women, but usually I date light skinned plus size women. And so I'm kind of like, well, then maybe you should, you know, get you a light skinned plus size woman. So that has been it's just been like it's been an experience. And so I honestly like I ask guys now, I'm just like, are you comfortable with dating a darker woman? You know, I have to ask these things because if you're not comfortable, if you're used to constantly dating light skinned women and you're one of these guys who kind of worry about what your friends say, your family say, then I'm not gonna be the person for you. Because I think I've mentioned to Shamika just even talking about just being dark skinned. It's a lot of challenges that you have to just overcome, and it's not just like as a teenager. It's just not even an adulthood. I remember I had to be when I was like a preteen, maybe 11, 12, and pink used to be like my favorite color. And I also stayed, I had moved to South Memphis at that time. Before that, I was staying in Hickory Hill, but I was going to a school all the way off of Walnut Grove. And of course, when I was going to the schools over there, it was different. It was very diverse, or what I would say was a limited number of African Americans who went to the school. And when I moved to South Memphis, all we had was African Americans. And I just recall just being dark and folks be like, oh, you're an African, like booty scratcher, like how they said on Boys in the Hood, or you black as the crown, just black as the street, all these different things. And I remember like going to my grandma and saying like, I want to be light skinned. I remember like crying, telling her I wanted to be light skinned, and she would be like, why you want to be light skinned? Like, what's going on? She's like, you're beautiful. Like, did a lot of things to just like still encourage me. So I would tell her, because I was at this new school, I was like, well, they make fun of me because I'm dark skinned. But when I was going to the school, like on the other side of town, I had never like encountered that. So it was difficult just even growing up and being dark. And I also has mentioned like my mom is like the same color as me. And I used to like, well, now I'm getting back to it. I used to be like really, really girly girl. Like my favorite color was pink. And I was told like I shouldn't wear light colors because I'm dark. And so since that was the case, I didn't finally start wearing like lighter colors until I was like 21, 22, finna graduate college with my first degree. Because I was like, oh, I can't wear that color because I'm dark. So I wouldn't wear yellow. I wouldn't wear purple. I wouldn't wear pink. Like it would have to be a dark color because I'm like, well, I need to make sure that I don't wear light colors because I'm a darker woman. And that was a long gap. So I'm like, we're talking about middle school, high school, and then I'm getting ready to go to college. Like I find old pictures and I look like, ooh, I really did not put on these colors. But I think with the great thing about going to school, when I started taking like African American study classes, I just, started learning more, researching more, and it was just like, hey, let me just kind of break away from this. But yeah, that's kind of in like how it is. And I could just go into like I can go into like the work, just even having certain jobs. And this wasn't too long ago. I worked at a job and I was an intern there some years prior. And so when I got hired, probably like 4 or 5 years later, And the lady who hired me as an intern basically hired me as an assistant, in a sense, to this other lady who had no experience even in this field. But she hired her because she was light skinned. She was a pretty woman, had the real curly hair. But I was the one who did all the work. So when it was time for meetings to be held or presentations, of course, the lighter woman got to go. If something got messed up, it was like, oh, Schnick, well, hey, I need you to go fix it. That's how it would. That's how it would be. I've even gone to interviews, and like I said, if my hair is something like Afrocentric, it'll be like, oh, they would say, well, I like your hair. Or even now, like when I go in stores, if I'm wearing like my Afrocentric hairstyle, women are just look and be like, your hair is cute. And so now I'm just like, yeah, I thought so too. That's why put it in. Like it seems like, I'm coming off just being mean, but I guess for me, like if you've ever just encountered being a dark-skinned woman, you will understand like it's so many obstacles. I'm like, we're talking about a time when I was like in 8th grade, just so upset to be dark. And I'm like, I'm 32 now. So whatever you say about my skin, like it is what it is. I'm going to say something back to you, and you may not like what I say, but hey, you said something to me, because I don't go around like treating people like that regardless of what their color is. And so I often tell people like, hey, first of all, as being a woman, you have to work 3 times harder anyway, just being a woman. And then I'm just like, hey, when you a darker woman, you gotta work 4 times harder. And then when you're a darker plus size woman, you gotta work even harder. So it's just like keeps breaking down and breaking down. And so I think that's where like I'm in my life. I'm just at a point where I'm just like, hey, let me try to break every obstacle, I can break. And so it's been it's been a journey. And it's something, I mean, I will be honest, I'll probably always like have to deal with that, but it doesn't bother me. But I'm always concerned about those 3 and 4 year olds, those little kids whose parents may not be able to have those conversations, because like I said, like I went to my grandmother basically embraced me, reassuring like, hey, it's okay to be dark skinned, when even though like I had my mom say like, hey, you shouldn't wear these colors even though we're the same exact color. So my heart goes out to like darker kids who just won't be able to have their outlet. And I mean, just I've seen stuff on just so many like social media sites, and just researchers just seeing like how your skin complexion, it can go into mental health. And it's weird because it's mental health month, but it can definitely affect your mental health, because society will make you feel like being dark is like the worst thing in the world. And how dare you get like aggressive, or if you get mad, then you're definitely that angry black woman. So it's like you have to, in a sense, like be seen and like be appreciative that you're there.
Okay, I have a question because
Oh
you
my
both kind of touched on it. You touched on not only you, Shaniqua, you touched on social media, and Dr. MJ, you touched on music videos. How do you guys feel because I do feel like there is a lack of appreciation when it comes to dark skinned women, unless it's pandering. So some people will pander, in my opinion, to darker skinned women on social media. Oh, I love me maybe a woman that they don't necessarily date outside of social media, as far as them saying, oh, I love a dark skinned woman, so that they can get the attention on social media and then go back to praising preferences. How do you guys feel that social media influence, as well as music videos, impact the dating experience of women of darker skin?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in real quick.
Right.
Go ahead. And I want to say, everything you shared, I was like, wow, it was so much to unpack there. And it's a few things I want to come back to that you mentioned. But media is powerful, right? And we talk about we need to see representation all the time, especially as Black people in America. You hear people who are Hispanic and Asian American, they want to see themselves represented. And so The reality is, if you look at a lot of TV networks, like if you look at different shows, if you look at even reality TV shows, you look at social media images, usually it still shows up there, right? This Eurocentric standard of beauty being normalized as, okay, this is the standard of what a beautiful person should look like. I know there has been more and more movements to have more representation in terms of diverse, just diverse bodies, diverse hair. We talked about texturism. We really didn't get into that just yet. You did talk about your hair, Schanaque, and how some people, when they see your natural hair, they're like, oh, um, and a lot of us have gone through that. And so thank God, you got stuff like the Crown Act that was just passed. And I'll explain what that is. The Crown Act is basically a law that was put in place saying that you can't discriminate against a person based on their hair texture. But you think about it, what other group has ever had to defend their natural hair the way that it grows out of their hair? Nobody, right? So not only do we have to deal with issues around, prejudice just because we're Black, but we also have to deal with colorism and texturism and all of the things. So I think one of the things that I would like to see is just more diverse representation in the media and in social media images as well, where you see women of all colors, all shades, all backgrounds represented. Because like Schanaque pointed out, it's really harmful, especially for young girls, when they don't see themselves represented. When all they see is, I love me some Beyonce, don't get me wrong, but all they see is like Beyonce and Shakira and some of the lighter artists being praised, and they don't see themselves represented. Like they don't see anybody with locks or braids. So I definitely think, media plays a big role in how, we see ourselves. And it's really important that, especially for children, that they have that upbringing where somebody is pouring into them and saying that you are beautiful. You are beautiful. Yes, you may see different people of different shades, different backgrounds, but you're beautiful. Embrace you. And so, yeah, it's really important.
So I definitely agree. I will say this. When I saw Black Panther and I saw Lupita in Black Panther, like I could have cried. Like it was one of those, like, people are so happy to receive like Emmys, Oscars, and Tonys. I was so happy to see her in the movie because I was just like, y'all, we done came a long way. And because it's so hard. Like somebody, like if you just don't pay attention, you'll just be like, I mean, hey, she's a dark woman in a movie. I'm just like, they haven't always picked darker women, and with them having their natural hair, that's not how that's technically considered like abnormal. That's not normal. So to start seeing, when I saw her, like I was like so happy. And I remember that Viola Davis is one of my favorite actresses. And when she was doing How to Get Away with Murder, when she actually it was a scene in there on one of the episodes, and she took like all her makeup off, and she didn't have anything in her hair. It was just her natural hair. And I was like, that was like just a powerful scene, because it's one of those, like, what, forget how y'all want to see me. I am definitely a dark-skinned woman. I'm taking the hair out. I'm taking the makeup off. Here's who I am. When I look in the mirror, I take everything off. I'm this person. And it was so symbolic. But what happens is when we have our music videos, our music videos, they don't portray us like that. At all. I mean, you see it all the time. So if they do portray us, it may be like, maybe you make it a 2-second clip, just to make sure like they don't get like a lawsuit. And that happens in like movies. Like, well, let me at least put like, one dark-skinned person in there or one Black person in there, because I don't want a lawsuit. It's just enough to say I put somebody in, but it's so small.
I got something to say about this because Y'all know I love me some music and I love me some Lil Wayne. But Lil Wayne had a song said she'll look better red. So
Yeah.
what do you think? Like even if people are saying, "Oh, colorism, it doesn't exist," if you're repeatedly hearing somebody saying, "I prefer lighter skinned women, I prefer Latin women, I prefer this," or even we talked about struggle love. We as Black women, like it's almost like we talk about the dark, just as Black women, they want us to settle for less. So I can only imagine, like, as skin tones going to it, it's just ridiculous because it's programming. Even I think I showed you guys that Rick Ross video, the programming in that video with the little dark skinned girl. Now she has the attitude, you ain't never gonna get that car. And then the person of another ethnicity, you're gonna get that car someday with the light skin and curly hair. I'm like, they're playing into it in our face. And then, like we talk about the dating experience. So it's just, I'm sorry, y'all. It makes me mad because it's like, why do people show such hatred towards, people that have your backs? Like I had Tasia Shorter on the show, and she said the one person, and I'm not speaking on all Black men, but this is her truth. She said the one person that is supposed to understand me the most doesn't communicate with me or shows hatred towards me. So it's like, when did we get to this point?
Yeah.
And I can kind of piggyback off that, and I do agree with her on that. I think I've mentioned to you, Shamika, even with my dad, because I don't mind saying it. Like my mom was the only dark skinned woman he ever been married to, and it was like less than 2 years. And every woman, he's on wife number 4 now, is light skinned. And I'm just like, it's interesting, like. I really, really just say like this interested, and it's not like I'm like they keep getting lighter, and I'm just like, huh. And I remember just kind of mentioning to him, I said something about my mom with them being married. He like, I don't even count their marriage, and I was like, oh, okay, well,
some history.
I do. I still think, like, a lot of what you all have talked about, unfortunately, it goes back to this conditioning of, we've been taught that certain people are beautiful in certain standards, certain features. So even featurism, let's talk about that real quick. So I know we talked a lot about the skin tone and the hair texture, but featurism, people who may have smaller noses or noses that resemble more European noses, and then lips and eyes and just all of that. That's another thing that's all a part of it too. And because so many people have been taught for so long that this is the ideal person you want to be with, right? Look at their hair. We have just been conditioned, and we have this misguided belief that one type of beauty is the only kind of beauty, and not all. There are some people out there who view it that way. And one thing I want to say that's interesting is, if you look at nations that have not been colonized by Europeans, usually they don't have the same hang up when it comes to complexion. Look, so I'll use my husband as an example. My husband is Eurasian, Middle Eastern. He's from Turkey. And so they were not colonized at any point by, let's say England or something like that. And so, when I told him about some of the issues we deal with in the US around colorism, he was like, oh, really? Because when he sees a Black person, he just sees a Black person, like whether you're light skinned or dark skinned. So for him, he thinks more about the racism aspect because he knows that's a reality for us. But he didn't even realize that, there's this huge divide based on skin complexion. And when I had to break it down to him and show him examples, because I think he almost thought like, well, I think you're just like overthinking it. And I'm like, let's sit here and look at these music videos for the next, you're going to sit here and watch music videos for the next 30 minutes, half hour, and look at the type of women that are in the videos and that are represented. Usually they got long wavy hair, they have lighter skin. And then I think it finally hit them like, oh, okay, I see what you mean. There is like this division, or people perpetuating this belief that only, lighter women deserve to be put up on this pedestal. And so, I mean, it's very real. And so, yeah, I'm just bringing in that kind of aspect in that lens too, just to kind of show like it's deeply embedded in our society and societies that have been colonized at some point.
And also when you like, if we kind of go back to like the job piece, like for example, I've just noticed just from my own experience, like if you're like a light skinned Black woman or brown skinned Black woman, I've seen them like cry and then they're like nurtured because they're crying. But then I'm just like, but if you see a dark skinned Black woman crying, it's just like, okay, well, you still fired. Like that's really like what happens. I was like, so tears are able to kind of save your job if you are not dark. I mean, kind of depending on the situation, but sometimes it saves your job. Like you can shed tears and it's just like, oh, okay, if you're a dark woman, well, bye. That's it. And it's more common than what people actually believe. But like I always say, if like you would have to be like a fly on the wall just to see it. And also like working in these jobs with being just a darker woman and a darker plus size woman, people, your coworkers, they will intentionally try to like mentally break you. And I mean by that, it'd be like, girl, now you shouldn't have put in their hair, or oh, they dress a little too tight, or anything to break your confidence, because we do work in places where they cannot stand when you are first of all a woman with confidence. Like how dare you be dark, how dare you be big, and then you be confident. Like that is not supposed to go. So like I mentioned earlier, it's one of those, sometimes they want you just to kind of be seen but not heard. And if you're gonna be seen, you need to be in the corner.
Yeah, this idea that you have to shrink, play small because you're lucky to even be here kind of mentality.
Yeah. Right.
And you know what? Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just like, it's one of those like, yeah, just be happy that you're here.
Exactly. And one of the things, because I know this is more into like physique and body type, but you talked about being a larger woman, and I think about Lizzo. Think about how much people are like, oh, she real confident. She her up for being confident, just like you. Like, how dare you be confident because you don't fit this standard? And it's like, well, why wouldn't I be confident? I don't have to fit into this box. So it's just amazing how we put our expectations on other folks, like, oh, you should or shouldn't be confident if you don't look a certain way that they think is ideal compared to their, jaded view of what's beautiful and not. Yeah. So it's just interesting, when you think about all the different factors that people have to deal with, because a lot of times it's not just race. It's skin tone, it's hair, it's features, it's body type, it's abilities. It's just so much that goes into it. And the more that you don't fit into a certain mold, the harder it is for you a lot of times. Like, put it out.
I have a question for you all. I'm sorry, Schanaque. I have a quick question for you all. Me and MJ talked about it before the call. So there are a lot of men, and I won't point out just one, that are building platforms off the backs of Black women and tearing Black women down in comparison to other races, as well as in comparison to different complexions. How do you guys, like, what is your stance on that? Because some of them are telling them, we talk about the passport bro. Yeah, I'm putting it out there. We talk about the passport bros. We got these red pill men. We got men going, I don't even know if y'all know about all these movements on YouTube, men going their own way. Y'all can look them up later. But a lot of these men are against the Black woman. And then we look at colorism as well. How do you guys feel presently we're impacted by these movements of men just building platforms off of hating the Black woman.
Ooh, yeah, can I chime in real quick? Okay. Oh, this is the one right here. And you know what? I'll tell you. Obviously, I have nothing against interracial dating. My husband is, a Muslim man from Turkey, right? And so interfaith, interracial relationship, international relationship. The problem that I have is that when you feel the need to tear down another race or another group simply because it's like, okay, I'm going to date this person from this nationality because I don't want to deal with this woman over here, this Black woman. I have a problem with that. I think it's possible to have, you can date different people without tearing others down and feeling like that you have to just, yeah, I'm just going to go here. God rest his soul, God rest his soul. But Kevin Samuels, I think his platform, when he came out, I was like, this is very toxic. Like, this is not good for the Black community, especially like Black families, Black love, because I just felt like it created a lot of division. And he built a platform, in my opinion, on tearing down Black women. And if you look at some of those groups that came out, while he was alive and after he died, a lot of it stemmed from, what he was teaching. So more and more guys are like, yeah, don't even date them Black women. You can go to South America and find this woman. And so a lot of it is, it stems from a place of hatred, in my opinion. And I don't think it's good at all.
I agree. Yeah. That's, as you were speaking about it, you said the word hatred. I was just like, it's coming to a point now where a lot of people, not even just men, like a lot of people, they strongly dislike, like you said, they hate us. And I'm just like, I'm like, our ancestors worked so hard. I'm like, it took us a long time to even get to where we are now. And now, like, of course, like you have, like I said, people, people like Kevin that just, it's like it sets us back. And sometimes when people say things and you put it out there in the media, or you have these different movements, that pushes us so far back, because you already have like other ethnicities, some other ethnicities who already have their own perspective of us anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's like, please don't put that out there, because it only takes one, and then it messes it up for like everybody. So if it's something, for example, with I'll just say being a Black woman, like we'll just say argumentative, right? So most guys be like, Black women are argumentative. And I'm just like, it's a such thing as having an argument, and it's a such thing as having a disagreement. Just because I'm disagreeing with you does not mean I'm arguing with you. Well, if you listen to Kevin Samuels and that's your man, of course, that's what he's going to say. And so if this is who you follow, you're going to automatically assume that's what, I'm just going to say what I'm doing as a Black woman when I'm just simply disagreeing with you. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have these different movements, like, yeah, they're this, they're that. And so sometimes we find ourselves like just even trying to defend it. And I will be honest, I didn't just kind of got to the point. I'm just like, you know what? Hey, you can research, you can look it up. I'm not going to sit up here and just constantly keep defending when your perspective is not going to change. If you're not an open-minded person, it's nothing I can do about it. I mean, if you have this hate for me because I'm dark skinned, hey, I'm sorry. My skin color is not changing, and it's okay if you don't like it, But I'm like that. And so, like I said, everybody's not gonna think like that, because I'm sure most dark-skinned women, especially as children, have cried. So when we start seeing these different movements, like I said, even like I said, when I mentioned with Black Panther, like with seeing Lupita, I was like,
Uh-oh.
is I just want to I just wish it would stop. I wish we could kind of go back to a world where social media wasn't as big. Um, when social media wasn't as big, things would be going on, but we just didn't know. And now because the platform is so big, it just it messes things up for us. And it does appear that we're going backwards instead of going forward. So
Yeah.
that's my take.
Yeah. So, I mean, what can I just add something to that?
Mhm.
Because, like, as you were talking, I was like, you're absolutely right. And what's interesting, if you look at history, like the Black family unit in America prior to, let's say, like the Civil Rights Movement, right?
Mhm.
You didn't see the same issues that we see now. Like, even my grandmother said it, like, Black men and Black women weren't at odds like that. They weren't, bashing each other. And of course, they didn't have social media back then. And then you didn't have people putting out a certain rhetoric like, oh, don't date Black women, go to this country and date these women. So, I mean, even just looking at the Black family unit and the dynamic there, I mean, it has shifted quite a bit over the years. I mean, if you look at it from a historical standpoint.
Can you break down a little bit how the dynamic has shifted?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is because if you look at most relationships prior to the civil rights movement, there was a time interracial dating and stuff like that. It wasn't even a thing. So, like, all the brothers who were like, oh, passport bros, yeah, like a lot of those women, they probably wouldn't have been able to legally marry during that time. And so, of course, when there you have a society that has certain laws in place, like Jim Crow laws and stuff like that, and they're saying like you can't date this person, like you have to be with your own people. Then of course you're going to have a tighter family unit, right? You're going to have like a tighter Black family unit, and you're not going to run into some of those same issues. Now, colorism was still a thing, right? That has been a thing for a long time. And I don't know if everybody's familiar with like hearing terms like the paper bag test, even back then, there were, relationships like, okay, we got to be with lighter skinned Black people and stuff like that. But it was still Black men embracing Black women and vice versa, right back then. But I think with time, when interracial dating and just dating people of different backgrounds and cultures became normalized, we just seen a shift in like the Black family unit, and just the mentality too. But yeah, there's always been some issues there around colorism. Like I said, that has existed for a long time. But I do think we live in a time where it's just, I don't know, it's hard to watch sometimes because, and yes, I'm in an interracial relationship, but I've never been anti-Black men. Like, pretty much all of my relationships up to this point where, I dated Black men. So it has nothing to do with that, but it's just, I don't like to see us pitted against each other. Like, I don't like it to be like, okay, don't date Black women, don't date Black men. I think we still need the Black family dynamic. Like, it's really important in our society.
And I'll say this, even if we just go back, if we even we just, for example, just say with just let's say we stay within the Black race. I know for sure I have only had dated two guys who were dark skinned.
Mm.
Everybody else has been brown or light skinned. And I've always been like, hey, I love dark skinned men, but dark skinned men just don't love me. And other dark skinned men who I have been like, oh, he is so attractive. I'm like, look at his skin, right? He'll just be like, Schnickle, you cool, but you dark. Like, you dark, I'm dark. I'll be like, hey, well, guess you told me, huh? And that's what comes out their mouths.
Mm.
And I'm just like, whew. And I'm still like, well, let me still keep being a fan. But if I date like this light skinned guy, they'll start doing things like, what if we have a child? It's gonna be brown or it's gonna be light. And I'm like, well, how this child not gonna be dark? And then, they'll just kind of look at me crazy. Like, and sometimes honestly I have to ask those things just to see where your mind frame is, because what if you do have a darker child? And like I said, having that conversation, it's gonna be completely different than it may be if your child is brown skinned. Maybe if you're brown, you're not coming home crying talking about I want to be lighter because I'm brown. But I know if you're dark for sure, you're definitely going to you're gonna come home and have some issues depending on where you are. Like, I'll just say in Memphis, if you're on one side of town, you may be fine. If you're on another side of town, it may be different. So environment also plays a huge factor into like colorism, and which is a piece that people don't even speak on because they don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if we go to children, I mentioned this to Shamika. I remember when my niece was like 3, and I took her to the store to get a Barbie doll. And she basically, I'm like, choose which one you want. And she picked the white Barbie doll. I was like, well, why you didn't pick the black Barbie doll? She's like, because she's ugly. This girl is 3. So we had to go through that whole conversation. I had to talk to my sister about that because my niece is dark too. And I'm just like, you 3 years old calling a doll ugly. This is going to be a problem if you don't like address it now. And of course, my sister's brown. My sister's like, well, how am I supposed to address this? And I was like, well, I'll talk to her. I'm like, we'll talk to her together about it, because I didn't want her feeling or even experiencing some of the things that I experienced, growing up. And I would say this, working, still working within like the school system, hearing people come to the little babies. I say the little babies. I'd be like, "You're such a pretty chocolate girl. Why she just can't be a pretty girl? Why you have to emphasize on her being chocolate? Because you don't go to a light skinned child and be like, you're a pretty light skinned child. You do not say that." But I think it's been considered as normal, so that's why people just say it. Like, oh, you chocolate, or you're a pretty dark skinned girl. Let her just be a pretty dark skinned girl. You don't have to do that.
Yeah. Can I? Yeah. Can I say something to follow up? You said though.
Mm-hmm.
About your niece, where you talked about how she picked it out. So are you all familiar with the experiment that they did back? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And now I want to say it was like the 50s or I don't remember the
Yep.
exact time period.
Mm-hmm.
But same thing, even back then, the little kids, they would have the option for folks who don't know what I'm talking about. So they would have a white doll and then they would have a black baby doll. And they would have kids come up and say, okay, which doll is the pretty doll, the nice looking doll? And all of the
Mm-hmm.
kids pick the white doll. So that just lets you know, even at 3 years old, you know, she's probably taking in certain images that she sees in the media, right? Because she sees mostly lighter couples or white couples or whatever. She's seeing certain images or something to make her think, even at that age, that that's the better dial, the better complexion. And so that just goes to like, it's really important that we have conversations with our kids to let them know, all shades are beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All shades are beautiful. And so, yeah, because I mean, it's subconscious. Like you don't even realize what you're taking in sometimes when you're taking in those images and stuff. Yep. And it starts at a very early age. So yeah, you spot on, Shaniqua. It's real.
And that's how I mentioned, like, because some people don't even realize, like, sometimes, like, you can be a light skinned couple and you have a dark child. People don't realize, like, how it can, like, skip. And so I mentioned to Shamika, I was like, I just think people just need to know about that conversation, because if you do not know how to handle that conversation, it can just really just lead to other issues. Like, I feel like parents who have dark skinned children need to know, like, hey, if my child comes home, I feel like this. It's one thing to be like, hey, somebody's picking on my child because, they don't like her shoes, but it's another thing when somebody's picking on your child because they don't like their color.
Right.
So it's one of those, like, it's imperative, like, if you have like a darker child or a dark, even I can say like dark brown, make sure you have to be like open-minded for that conversation, because if you're two light-skinned parents, that's gonna be hard.
Yes.
And I'll say this, even what I do know, for people who are mixed, they deal with those issues as well, from like friends I've had, because it's like, well, they're not quite light enough to be around, I'll just say, Caucasians, but they're not quite dark enough to be around African Americans. So they start dealing with it like as well. And people don't know how to have those conversations either.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, I mean, obviously I'm biased because I work in DNI, and I'm really big on embracing people, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, for that very reason. And like, because we have to understand that there is beauty in difference. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who set the standard of, okay, this is considered beautiful. We have to see beyond that. And we have to teach our children to see beyond that at a certain point too. Like, there is beauty in every race, every shade, every size. And I think that's just important that we teach our children that, so when they do grow up and start dating, they don't have those same misguided beliefs that, oh, this complexion is better than that one, right? The more we teach them at a young age and show them by example, like, don't just
Mm-hmm.
say it, but you can't say like, oh, all people are beautiful, and then you, like, when you date people, you only date a certain person, like, you have to
Mm-hmm.
show young people by example too, that you know all hair is beautiful, all features are beautiful, all skin tones are indeed beautiful, so we can break
Mm-hmm.
that cycle.
And I'm just gonna say one last thing. I'm kind of backing up from a conversation just what we were talking about earlier. When we was just kind of talking about the media. Do you all remember the movie Precious?
Yes,
And of
yeah.
course, she won. If I'm not mistaken, she won the Oscar. I think, was it the Oscars? One of the yeah. um, that I was not a fan of the movie Precious at all. Um, but that is a way how they were able to portray us
Yeah.
as, even just being a bigger woman, being dark skinned. That was definitely a way to portray us, and they portrayed us so well that, and I'm not, and I love Gabby. I definitely love her, but they love the movie so much. I'm just like, okay, wait a minute, y'all. Like, that movie was kind of hurtful. It was a lot of things going on in that movie. And it's like, here go award. And I'm just like, now we have whole love story movies that's not portrayed like how, that actresses were portrayed in Precious, and you don't even recognize those movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it. What made me think about it is just like, I've like been just out before, and I had guys like, "Dang, bro, you look just like Precious," and I'd be like, "Fool, no,
And
I don't." And
that's
you,
one of the things too.
mm-hmm.
This conversation, I'm glad we're having it, but some of the stuff makes me mad because people are disrespectful
Mm-hmm.
based upon how, like, let's say you're dark skinned, it's almost like I can justify my disrespect because you're not the standard or the preference, versus if you were a lighter skinned slim woman, I would feel bad because why you picking on her. And there are
Mm-hmm.
certain people who would jump in and defend, and I've seen it. So I'm not just talking from, out of my head. But if you were
Mm-hmm.
a petite, lighter woman, there would have been somebody to jump in and say, "Why are you talking to her like this?" So even being defended, and Taja's actually in the chat, and she was on our last colorism conversation, and she was talking about lighter skinned people being conditioned to believe they are worthy of having someone to provide and protect and things like that. So that kind of falls into it. The fact that somebody was so confident, and was it a male that did it? He was so confident disrespecting you. It's a problem. And nobody jumped. Were people around when it was said?
Oh, they were around, so you know it's the
And
hee-hees and
nobody
ha-has.
defended you.
But then,
I'm sorry.
one thing I've learned, like sometimes you better know how to stand your own ground.
Yes.
It is imperative, and so however it gets is however it gets. But I think by the time I finish, he's probably like, I'm probably everything but a child of God. But like I
But
usually
that's
tell people,
sad.
but like I usually tell people, like I don't go around bothering people. So be careful, be mindful when you say things, because you will not like how I come back towards you. Especially like you didn't even know me. You just wanted to, you needed a hee hee ha ha moment. And so now it's one of those, men hate to be, as I say, little boy. So now I'm like, well, let me little boy you. And I'm like, I think that's gonna hurt a little bit, more. And it is. Even though I'm like, hey, no, maybe I should not have stooped to your level. But it's one of those like that completely caught me off guard. But you needed an audience, so let's do it. And unfortunately, I know with just being dark and being bigger, that happens more often than what people believe. It's gotten better now because it's just like over time, like people just kind of know my personality. But at first, when people just don't know you, they'll just automatically just be like, "Oh, because you're bigger or you're darker, let me just test you." And I'm just like, "Look, I don't take too many tests, okay? I done been to school long enough, so I'm not taking any more tests. This is how it's gonna go."
But that's sad that you even have like even processing that. I've seen it where somebody was like, maybe we call it checking in Memphis, get talked about in school, and then if they have certain features that are more aligned with a Eurocentric standard of beauty, somebody will jump in and to be, until Taja said that I didn't even recognize, they will jump in and defend this young lady and say, why are you picking on her? But it's sad because if your look doesn't align with what people feel is the standard, it's almost like they laugh at your pain in a text, which is why people have been able to build a platform off of hating complexions in a whole race of women.
Yes.
Come on. Like, what are we doing as a society? Why are we building our platforms off the backs of each other? Like, not even just women, like just off of each other, off of each other's backs, y'all. We're not collectively healing. We're tearing each other down and getting views.
I can answer that. Like part of it.
I'm getting mad. I'm sorry.
I know. I get it. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating, especially when kind of like thought processes and systems need to be dismantled because it's not helping us. It's only making things worse. And the reality is, when you think about like reality TV shows where they're tearing each other down, they're fighting, and you're thinking about, social media and some of those things, it's profitable for some people. Like they have learned, like, okay, I can build a following off of this, and everybody in this day and age wants to be an influencer. And unfortunately, some people decide to use certain platforms where they're tearing down maybe women or dark skinned people, whatever it may be, whatever their platform. And so they have learned that controversy sells a lot of times, right? And that they can build a whole audience based on this narrative, even if the narrative is divisive. So it's unfortunate, but Kevin Samuels became a millionaire along with several other folks who I know. I can't think of anybody in particular, but I know there are influencers and stuff out there who have built an empire on divisiveness.
And I'm gonna tell y'all the funny thing about it, it's not just what people fail to realize, it's not just men doing it. It's
Right.
also women. Women who are the quote unquote standard are taking the Kevin Samuels formula in order to get views and likes. They do not care about us growing and loving each other. They don't care. They don't even care about the divisiveness. All they care about is that check that comes along with the views, because people would rather hold others accountable than hold themselves accountable. So instead of me holding myself accountable, let me say the black man did it to me. It's his fault. It's at the end of the day, all you can do is look at you and try to heal and not hurt somebody else while you're trying to heal.
Yes.
You can't break other people while you're in your healing process. It's
here's what I know, and I guess because I've worked in like mental health, and I know you all have heard the term like hurt people. When people are constantly just like belittling people, just dehumanizing, degrading them, sometimes I do have to step back and be like, you know what, you're going through something, but you know what, you would rather take it out on me. So, and I have said, like, you know what, you may want to see somebody because your day is coming. And I'm not threatening you, but I'm telling you your day is coming. And it may not always come to you as a person, but it may come to you as someone that you love. Like, for example, like your mother. You know what I'm saying? Your mother could be perfectly fine today, and then they may be getting ready to pull the plug on her tomorrow. And then you're going to be begging like, oh, why me? All these different things. What have I done? It'll start coming back to you. Those things you've done, those things you've said, how you put other people down. It'll start back coming to you. And then that's when people start going into, oh, forgive me, or I'm sorry, and all these different things. But if you think about it, when you're an influencer, look how many people you hurt with this. And now you're begging for forgiveness when you treated people like crap. Honestly, how do you know that person wasn't going through something? You didn't care. You just wanted to run your views up, make sure you was getting paid. But now it's funny how it reverses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will always say this. That's why I'm very, very big on how I treat people, because it comes back. And I truly do not believe that people who do those things, they think about that. But they're hurting, and you don't know. I would say this. Nobody knows how they're gonna leave this earth. I always like, hey, if I'm gonna leave this earth, just let me die in my sleep. Just let me die in my sleep. I don't want to leave this earth on a very cruel way. That's not how I want to leave this earth. I don't want to suffer. I just feel like people who have done these things, maybe in your time as you get ready to transition, you may have to be that person that, you know what, you've hurt so many people, you're suffering. You're suffering in your death. And that's not how it should be. But we sometimes we set these things in our life because we want these laughs and we want these views, and we don't know, like, it'll backfire on us. And some people be like, I don't care, it is what it is. And I hate when people be like, oh, I don't care, because you do care. The image, or the image that you're trying to portray is like, oh, it doesn't bother you. When we finish, everybody has feelings. So I just really think that people should just be mindful. So that's what I was saying about that.
Yeah. And can I just say, as a follow-up to that, I know this sounds a little cliche, but it really is true about beauty being internal. And I think it's so important that as we date, and well, I'm not dating, I'm married, but as folks date,
That's right. Say you married, because it's peak of the date pool. So go ahead.
Me and my husband date each other. We go out every Friday evening, but it's important to get back to that, like get back to the character and get back to like some of the things that Schanaque pointed out. Like, does the person have values, compassion? How are they treating people? If you're only going based on somebody's physical appearance, then and your relationship is ultimately not going to have a lot of substance to it. If that person, let's say y'all have nothing in common, but they may appear a certain way that's considered ideal according to beauty standards that, folks have created over the years, you're not going to get nothing out of that. And like, it's like you have to ask yourself too, like, what do I want in a person beyond just looks? Like what else do I want, like in terms of character, values, what that person stands for? And I think that's something that like it's important to remind ourselves of that too, as people, as we engage with others. So long story short, colorism is stupid.
Yeah.
Divisive. I'm like, it's just the dumbest thing. And just racism, period, all of that, like how we divide ourselves based on certain characteristics. But anyway, no, but I think it's really important to just go back to what Schanaque was said. I think that I'm glad you touched on that, sis.
Yeah, you have to make sure people just and I'm learning. Like I said, I'll tell anybody. I did learn it from my grandma. Like, look, you never get too old to learn. Like, you really have to make sure like people are aligning with you. And I will say, hands down, a lot of these guys, I'm like, this isn't gonna work. Now at this point, like I would rather just, I guess, just be your friends, because it's not gonna work. And I'll use this one as a perfect example. I thought I had almost hit the jackpot. I'm like, ooh, this man got him a half an acre. He already talking about marriage. I thought I had hit the jackpot. However, he had 6 children. 5 of his children were light skinned, and he had a dark skinned child. And she was so, first of all, she was real. She was so pretty. She wore her natural hair, had braces, and he had an issue with it. He was like, I don't know why she wear her hair like that. She too dark. She don't need to be wearing her natural hair. I mean, this is his child, right? And then you got me. I'm a real like dark Negro. Like when I started doing my jokes, I'm like, wait. I said, why are you talking about her like that? He was, I'm saying, like, she dark and then she's wearing her natural hair. And I was like, and she's beautiful. And so I said this to him. I said, well, I'm like, your youngest child, she's light skinned and she's overweight. He's like, you talking about my child? I said, no, I wanted you to see how that felt. Yeah. And I told him, I was just like, you know what? We're not gonna work. He's like, no, what's wrong? I said, we're not gonna work, because number one, you should love all your children equally. And I think it definitely became personal, because I already said like how my mom was like talking to me about certain, like wearing certain colors. But I'm like, we're not gonna work, because if you have an issue with your daughter, like somebody you brought in this earth with her mother, wearing her natural hair and having an issue with her color, then I know deep down inside, it may not show right now, that you have an issue with mine, but it's coming. And I was like, we're gonna have to just kind of go our separate ways, and we did. And I know for example, like he ended up calling back. He was like, I got this whole half an acre and these 5 bedrooms and blah blah. I said, that's perfectly fine. I got my own home. I said, so I'm glad I can just go home. I said, because I didn't like it. It didn't feel right. And I was like, it was best for me to remove myself before it went any further. And I know some women probably wouldn't have even caught that. But I caught it, and I'm just like, it's a problem, because he was another one of those guys like, oh, we gonna have kids and da da da. No, honey, I don't even want to talk about anything else with you, because you just showed me how you feel about your other daughter. You showed me how you treat her, and I'm like, I didn't appreciate that. So they would definitely tell you. And so that's why I'm very particular. Like, I'm like, let me see your kids. And so, and I just kind of, ask little questions just to see, because I need to know your mindset. And, if you answer correctly, fine. But if you answer incorrectly, it's like, yeah, block, never talk to me again. You would think, you didn't just almost killed me. But I don't have anything to say to you when it definitely comes to like colorism, especially with children. It's not happening.
Okay, as we wrap things up, what are some things that you guys feel we could do as a collective to heal and move in the right direction? So, what would be the first step to just healing and moving forward versus being so divisive?
And it's tough. I'll tell you, I mean, in theory, there's a lot of things we could do. Um, the first thing I'm gonna say, I used to have this T-shirt. I used to love the T-shirt. I cannot find it, y'all. It used to say "Decolonize your thinking." And I think the biggest thing that we have to do is recognize when we have those biases. Like when we have a bias, we have to acknowledge that it's there and ask ourselves, okay, where is this stemming from? Right. And so there's a lot of internal work that has to come. And there's a lot of work that has to come as a collective, as a Black community, because we have been conditioned and taught for so long that, certain standards of beauty are ideal in our society. So I think a lot of it, like at the end of the day, it's going to have to be us having these conversations and us doing some internal work and saying, okay, am I prejudiced? Do I have certain biases? Like, because for a long time, I didn't realize I had certain biases, right? Like when it came to like certain look, height, and all, and I think preference is one, but it can easily go into straight up prejudice, right? If you're not careful. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is we have to acknowledge when those biases are there. And it takes a lot of internal work, like I said.
I definitely would agree. I definitely would agree. I think I would also say, I don't know. I just keep thinking about like the little kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much love to just pour into like to children because it's it's scary. It's scary because right now we're not even sure what way this world is going into. We don't know. And so just having those, I keep just remember my 3 year old, well, when she was 3 year olds, just being able to just, especially not even just the girls, but just the little boys, just letting them know like, hey, it's okay. We love them, just encouraging them because we need them. We're going to get old. I need this 3 year old to be my doctor when I'm 80. Like, and I need you all to be okay. I don't want you to feel like I don't want to touch her. I don't want to help her because she's a dark woman. Or I dislike women of color so bad that I don't want to prescribe her the medication that can save her. I'll just rather tell her, you'll be okay without medication. So I just being able to just kind of, I don't know, strategize how to pour this love into these kids because they need them. And just from working in social work, a lot of them are not getting it from the house. They're raising themselves. So I think that's what I would say. That's a whole nother whole nother topic, whole nother world. But in Memphis, it's crucial. It's definitely crucial here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys for joining this live. Stick around, but I'm about to end this live.
Okay.
Thank everyone for tuning in. You guys have an amazing day.